I chose this topic because sexual assault is something I'm very passionate about. I'm an advocate with the MSU Sexual Assault Program, and I work with sexual assault survivors on a regular basis. Sexual assault has affected my life personally and the lives of so many I know around me, and I think it is so important that we talk about sexual assault. For my consciousness raising meeting, I held it at my house. It was in my basement. I invited 5 women. All of the women knew each other. And I wanted to create a very safe and welcoming environment just because sexual assault can be a very sensitive, upsetting, and triggering subject. So, which is why I held 1 meeting instead of 2. I would have liked to have held 2, but I wanted the same women to attend both meetings instead of introducing a new member to like the second meeting. So before the meeting got started, I ordered pizza and I baked cookies from scratch for the women to enjoy while we had the meeting. I also set up what I decided to call a safe room. I got the idea from these things called calming kits we make at the sexual assault program, and in these calming kits there are items that stimulate your 5 senses. And what you do with these calming kits is if you're having a panic attack or if you're in a state of crisis, stimulating your 5 senses can actually work to ground you and calm you down. So I decided to set up a life-size calming kit in my basement in a separate room, so if someone was triggered or was really upset and just needed a moment to calm down, they could go in there and have a moment by themselves to calm down. Like the calming kits, my safe room included items that would stimulate the 5 senses. I had headphones, so the women could plug them into their phones if they wished to listen to music. I had my favorite stuffed owl. I had suckers and Jolly Ranchers, and I also had mandalas. And mandalas are these patterned images that when you color them in with whatever utensil you wish. I had crayons, markers, and colored pencils. They're actually proven to calm you down. And I also had a candle. And this is a picture of the finished product of my safe room. For my consciousness raising meeting, I wanted to begin by discussing feminism, some basic definitions of feminism, and where everybody in the room stood with respect to it. I then wanted to watch a documentary called Every 2 Minutes. Every 2 Minutes is a documentary filmed, produced, and directed by MSU students for a film class. The documentary is about sexual assault, and it does highlight the MSU sexual assault program and what advocates' roles are. The documentary speaks a lot about survivors, and it features many survivors sharing their stories. It also shows how law enforcement and other people are working to combat sexual assault, and it's just a very, very powerful and moving video. I think it is also very educational, and I really wanted to give these women an opportunity to watch this documentary because I absolutely love it and I talk about it all the time, so they were really excited when they learned that that is what we were going to be watching for part of the meeting. Once everyone got to my house, I invited them to get food. I explained to them why I was holding this meeting and also what consciousness raising was. I then went over a privacy statement. I made sure that they knew that they did not have to participate if they did not want to, that I was going to keep their names anonymous, and that no personal information would be shared in any way. I also wanted to stress that the goal of this meeting was to discuss feminism and sexual assault and how it affects our society, and it was not to share sexual assault experiences, but that it was, if that's what they wanted to do, that was okay. I wanted to make sure that they felt safe and that they did not feel pressured to divulge any information that they did not want to. Because I know it can be a very sensitive subject, and I just wanted everyone to feel safe. And I wanted the discussion to be as informal as possible, so after the documentary, I just wanted to open up the floor to my group members and let them lead the conversation. And I did have some backup questions planned just in case we started out really slow and we needed some help getting going. So before we watched the documentary, like I planned, we discussed feminism. We got everybody's stances on feminism, what their personal definition was, and everybody answered the question, do you identify as a feminist, which everybody did, which I thought was pretty cool. And then we watched Every 2 Minutes. And while watching the documentary, a couple people, including myself, cried, but nobody got upset enough to where they needed to use the safe room, thank goodness, because I did not want anyone to have to go there. And then after the documentary, I just asked everybody what they thought. And immediately one of my group members said, I really liked the quote that they used that President Obama made. And someone else responded, like, yeah, that was really cool, and I also like this one. And then everybody kind of just stopped talking for a minute, and then someone would make a little comment and then a different comment, and that went on for like 5 minutes or so. And then just almost out of nowhere, one of my group members said, "This part of the documentary reminded me when this guy, I'll leave unnamed, did this to me." And then all of a sudden, we're talking about our personal experiences with sexual assault. And so everybody who had experienced sexual assault was sharing their story with the group. And a lot of what we talked about when it came to that subject is that none of us knew that we had been sexually assaulted till afterwards. Like, we had to be educated and given definitions and like almost parameters to what sexual assault was before we were even able to recognize that we had been sexually assaulted, which we all thought was a huge problem and agreed that that's something that needs to be talked about more, that we need to educate younger people about, is what sexual assault is. We also talked about looking for an active yes, which is different than just waiting for someone to say no, I don't want to do this, but instead of waiting for someone to say no, looking for someone to actually actively give consent, say yes, like this is what I want to do. We also talked about having the right to wear what you want to wear, drink what you want to drink, go where you want to go. Like, you want to go to this party and wear this, you have the right to do that, and you have the right to feel safe while doing that, and nobody should be able to take that away from you. And no matter what you wear, what you say, or what you're drinking, like, no means no. Once you say no, that's the end of it. We also talked about victim blaming and how that is a huge problem within our society, and that is how society and a lot of people that we knew view sexual assault. They tend to blame the victim and look at what the victim was doing and say, well, maybe you shouldn't have worn that, or maybe you shouldn't have gone there. But when it comes down to it, the only person who is at fault for sexual assault is the person who perpetrated the crime. They committed a crime. A victim didn't. No one asked to be sexually assaulted, and it's not their fault. And we talked a lot about that. We also talked about, which was highlighted, a lot of this was highlighted in the documentary, which is where we got a lot of it, is believing other people. Like, if someone tells you a story about being sexually assaulted, it's not your job to judge them or ask for details or try and figure it out. It's your job just to be there and support them. So our conversation went on like that for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and then we kind of hit a lull, and one of the group members looked at me and she's like, "Jenny, can I go color a mandala?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course. You can do whatever you want. Like, I want you guys to do what makes you comfortable." So she went into the other room and brought all the supplies back in here, and we colored quite a few of the mandalas I'd printed out, and we just sat and talked. We listened to music, we played on YouTube in the background, and just talked for like almost another hour and a half about anything and everything. Some of it was about sexual assault, some of it wasn't, but it was really cool. I also wanted to show a couple pictures of the consciousness raising meeting. So here's a picture of the women that attended the group. They gave me permission to take a picture of them. I have a couple pictures of food we ate while the meeting was going on, and I really wanted to show the mandalas because I think it was so cool that we did that. So I have a couple pictures of them individually, a picture of them being drawn, and then I have a couple pictures of all of them together after we were all done. So I asked my group members if any of them would be comfortable giving a brief interview about their experience, and I had one that was very happy to do it, and we talked and we tried to figure out a way where she would feel the most comfortable, and we decided that what would be most comfortable to her was for her to have me step out of the room and her read the questions, like think of a response, and then just record her voice answering them instead of actually like using the webcam. So that is what I'm going to show next.
I feel like this would have really affected anyone personally, simply because the documentary itself was a really moving piece, and just to hear people tell their stories the way that they do, it's really enough to touch anyone on a very personal level. And then the discussion afterwards, where we were able to talk about what we saw, talk about what we heard, and to hear each other's opinions, to hear each other's stories. Again, it is enough to touch absolutely anyone on a personal level. I guess what I learned the thing that hit me the most, at least, was that sexual assault is just so unbelievably prevalent in everyone's lives. Like, it's sad that it's come to a point where we don't even recognize it for what it is. That you can be in a situation and just think that, like, oh, well, it's obligatory to do this, or oh, well, I mean, I said no a few times, but he or she kept pushing, so I mean, I guess it's not that big of a deal. Like, it is that big of a deal. If you say no, you say no. And to not even realize that, like, this is sexual assault, like, this needs to stop. It's just, it's a little bit unreal. It's a little bit surreal to find out that it is so prevalent and it's so unknown.
I loved my consciousness raising meeting. It went nothing like what I had expected it to, what I thought it might, but that's okay because it worked. My group members took the discussion where they wanted to and where they were comfortable with, and everyone was able to participate and express what they were thinking or feeling or what they wanted to, and everybody felt safe and comfortable, which was the most important part to me. I wanted everyone to feel very safe and very comfortable in the situation. And I also really liked that it ended without actually ending. I had kind of planned on a little bit more of a formal wrap-up, but there was just something so perfect about sitting around and coloring mandalas and just listening to music and laughing with your friends. It was a really great way to wind down, especially since our conversation got a little bit emotional and intense at certain points. So it ended beautifully, even though that is the last thing I expected to happen. And I also really like that it focused more on our personal experiences with sexual assault instead of sexual assault in general, because it made the discussion that much more meaningful and that much more powerful. Even though I really like my consciousness raising meeting, I don't think I would hold another formal one like this where I invite people and, like, we specifically meet to discuss a specific topic. Another thing I took from my consciousness raising meeting was how passionate everybody got about the topic once we started discussing it. Everybody was getting upset when we were talking about victim blaming and the fact that consent is so often ignored, and without even actually saying it, we were asking for equality. Men don't get scolded for wearing specific outfits, but women do, and women also get blamed if a sexual assault occurs because of the outfit that they were wearing. And the same happens with drinking. And feminism, it just asks for equality. And it was really cool to see in my meeting, especially looking back, except for the very beginning when we specifically talked about feminism. We didn't really specifically address it after that, but we were talking about feminism the entire time. We were asking for equality, and we wanted equality. Every time we said something like, well, that's not fair, or I have the right to do this, we as women have the right to do this, or men can do this, but it's not okay for women. And I definitely think that's why consciousness raising is still needed, or at least that's part of it. And I think my consciousness raising group, the meeting we had, that proved that to me. Like, we were able to have a really good conversation, but what stuck out to me was that a lot of us had no idea what sexual assault was until later in life. Like, 18, 19, 20, 21, that's when we learned about what it was. That's when we learned what the actual definition of consent was. Before that, none of us knew. My point is that we were never properly educated about the subject. And I think consciousness raising meetings are a safe way for that education, for a specific topic, especially one that is sensitive like sexual assault. And that's why I also think the goals of consciousness raising are still education and empowerment. We need to inform women of these definitions, no matter what the topic is, no matter what the subject matter is. And specifically to sexual assault, like, we need to let them know that it's not their fault, and that they're going to be okay, and that we're here to support them, and that we believe them. And I think that's why consciousness raising is still a good thing, and it should still happen today. Thanks for watching, guys.